All right. What's up, mortgage coach community? Dave Savage, Chief Innovation Officer of TrustEngine, founder of Mortgage Coach. I'm interviewing Brian Hale, one of the most well-known CEOs in the history of the mortgage business. Not currently a CEO, he's a coach to a lot of C-suites, helping them navigate these stormy waters. But I don't know anyone who's mentored more executives, active executives in the mortgage business today than Brian. Brian, as I've told you, I'm doing some research for this halftime report that I'm writing with Kristen Messerly. And we want to quote you. We want to know what you think. We want you to predict the bottom. And then we want to talk about the future. But welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always great to be with you, Dave. And more importantly, as importantly, hopefully with the rest of your audience as well. So you have a live, thriving, and huge mortgage coach nation out there. So pleased to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, well, I love following you on LinkedIn. You know, whether CEOs, head of productions, people that are making decisions at C-suite, follow Brian Hale on LinkedIn. And if you're a loan officer or a branch manager or regional, you should follow Brian Hale on LinkedIn. It's value, like he's using social media for good. I think Brian is pretty well known as being pretty candid, not always the optimist. Although last time I talked to you, Brian, you said the next 5 to 10 years in mortgage are going to be stupendously great. Do you still believe that, by the way?
I do still believe that. I think it's purely a combination of a demographic wave that is indisputable when you look at the head count, for lack of a better term, of Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z. You have, if you just take the bottom half of Gen X, all the millennials and Gen Z, it ends up to be about 175 million, essentially either homeowners or potential homeowners. And that's almost 2.5 times larger than the baby boomer generation was when it came through. Yeah, there you go. That's a slide.
So by the way, I just got off a webinar with Michael Franantoni, and I had Selma, the chief economist from CoreLogic, and I had Rob Chrisman. And I actually showed your slide. You noticed I got your logo over here. So so everyone, this is where I got this slide from. Was a previous conversation, but just to put some color, you were referring to this little wave right here, right?
Yeah, that's the tsunami coming at us right there. And so, look, I think, today's interest rate doesn't validate my story because we're sitting here in the low 7s or somewhere around 7, depending on what you're looking at. But I think a combination of this immense population combined with the fact that there's not enough houses in America to house everybody. So the value of housing, remember that 2007 and 8 mostly happened because of a crash of values. I don't see that anytime soon. This immense demand curve is coming through. I think the home builders are going to do exceptionally well. So a tip to any originator, if you have a chance to do business with builders, I would figure out how to build that relationship for now and into the future. But I also believe that interest rates will be lower than they have been on average over the last 20 years. I don't think they're going to get back to 2020 and 2021 levels at 2.5%. That's my 2 cents. But I think we could see a prolonged series of interest rates in the 4s and 5s. And people are getting used to, there's no shortage of demand right now. There's immense demand. There's no houses for sale except for the home builders. And so once that demand curve equals out between buyers and sellers, rates come down some, and you add this demographic wave coming at the industry, I can't tell you exactly the day that it will begin to improve, but I can assure you that the future is exceptionally bright for the origination business. Although that said, we're still 2 times too big as an industry compared to opportunity. And that's never been more the case. I got some data just yesterday, Dave, that suggested that about a year ago, there were still about 185,000 licensed NMLS originators in the business. And of course, that doesn't count a lot of originators working at banks who don't have an NMLS license. Well, let's just use that number for a second. 1 year later, that number's down to 99,000. And by the way, that number is licensed NMLS originators who've made at least one loan per month over the last year. And that data comes from Jeff Walton at Ingenious. So I want to footnote him. He published it yesterday in LinkedIn. And it's, I made a comment to his comment, and then I got a bunch of follow-up comments that suggest it probably is another 30% that needs to move to another career path, because there's about 4 million sales. You do the math, there's just not enough in there on an annualized basis. There's not enough in there to support the whole industry. And it's the data is telling you that the industry is shrinking rapidly. It'll eventually equalize, but the future for those who survive and make it is wildly bright.
Love that. I'm going to
look, Dave, one other thing I just want to add, because I know it's near and dear to your heart. You and I have had this conversation. Those originators who are smart and use data to identify the people who are not in real estate, but the people who actually sell significant amounts of real estate and build relationships with them, the future is so bright, they should be wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. And they have to be advisors. We'll talk about that more in a bit. I want to validate some thoughts on a few more slides. So this is another slide that I think does a nice job, for anyone that's listening to this, oops, I don't know what happened there. I hit a few too many slides, but the average interest rate, 40-year average, is 7%. And, I've been in the business since 86. So I was in the business when rates were, higher. I was. Yeah, my first 5 years in the business, rates were at 10%. But, guys, this is what it's looked like, and we're finally above it. And I don't know about you, Brian, but I want to ask this question. I think heads of production need to train their loan officers to excel and operate as though rates are going to be between 5 and 7. Now, Michael Frantoni and a lot of other smart people on rates think they'll get into the 4s at some point, although they're all saying that's no longer in 24, that's in 25. But we need to, right size our organizations. But the sales force that's going to thrive is the sales force that, one, knows how to operate when rates are here. And then another key point, this has never happened before, but you need to remember that this isn't going to go away. This is of all the people that have mortgages, this is everyone that's got a 2. This next little light blue line is everyone that's got 3, everyone that's got 4. And so you need to operate, be an advisor when most mortgages are lower than what rates are today. So like getting a move up buyer to move up is going to be more challenging. And then another key data point, data doesn't lie, 42% of Americans own their home free and clear. And everybody has a lot of equity. So by the way, that's a bright light. If everybody's got a lot of equity, the people that have mortgages, they have low rate mortgages, how do we consult? How do we advise these consumers to, hey, I'm going to rent out my house and buy a new one. I'm still going to sell my house and buy a new one. So any comments around any of that data?
Yeah. So first of all, I loved your slide. I lived in those 17.5% rate years, and I was a new originator at the time, brand new to the business. And my personal view, I'm closer to Mike, that I think it'll be 4 to 6 probably, but it doesn't matter. Your point is dead on. Whether it's 5 to 7 or the 5s to the 7s or the 4s to the 6, that's basically the difference between a little bit of a refi run and not. Meaning, I think if rates were to come down into the 5s early next year, you're going to get a refi boom. You're going to refi the last 2 years worth of production that you closed at 6.5 to 7.25, right? But that's going to be short-lived. It's going to come and go. And smart originators will stay focused on purchase volume. I feel like I'm complimenting people here today, but I saw a LinkedIn post yesterday by Alec Hansen, Chief Marketing Officer over at Loan Depot. And his dad and I go back 30 years together. And I've known Alex since he was a kid. And he made the point yesterday in one of his videos that if I was an originator today, I would try to forget everything I knew for a second and think of myself as a brand new originator in the industry today. And what would I do today based on today's reality? Not what I learned 20 years ago, not what I learned 10 years ago, not what I learned 5 years ago about how to be successful in this business. I would try to go to a clean slate of paper and say, what do I need to do, know, and be like, and how do I present myself in today's reality? And I think any originator who doesn't think of themselves as the CEO of their business, even I'm a believer in team and I'm a believer in being part of an organization and getting the values, but you have to think of yourself, I think, in any role as the CEO of your business. And part of being a CEO, in my opinion, is to deal with reality, not how we wish things were, not how we want things to be. How are things? And what do we know about how maybe as far forward as we can predict the future? And then what are my skill sets? What's my training? What's my knowledge? What's my marketing approach? Who are my clients? If all your clients died tomorrow, how would you go out and build a new set of referral partners? And so, again, back to the data issue, targeting the right ones. How do you communicate? How do you use social media? How do you do follow-up? How do you follow up your past leads? All those things. And if you can take what you have today and take what you think of if you were a newbie today and put those two together, I think you have a really bright future in the business.
I love that. I'm going to walk you through some of my philosophies that, are big concepts to train loan officers. So one, I'm going to say a statement. I say this a lot in the marketplace, but what if I could tell, well, first of all, my first question would be to an executive, what if you could be, have a magic wand and be 10 basis point more profitable last year and the first 6 months of this year? What if you could be 10 basis points more profitable in the past? First of all, what would that have done to you? And I personally think a lot more lenders, just 10 basis points more profitable, they actually would have been profitable versus losing money. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. First of all, just the presumption of 10 basis points more profitable is a presumption that you were profitable. And we know from Fred Tony's data at the MBA that essentially 90% of the industry was not. And so in some cases, the real phrase is you'd be 10 basis points less negative. Either way, your math works, which is what's the econ. So if you do $1 billion, 10 basis points, $1 million, right? So it's $1 million swing for 10 basis points. And I think that's how you have to think about it, right? If you think about how companies in the public environment, not mortgage companies, just companies in general, are typically valued at 10 times earnings or something like that, right? A multiple of earnings. Well, that means if you spend $1 for a Diet Coke in a meeting, that Diet Coke has a $10 impact on your valuation.
Right.
Right. So if you start thinking in those terms, what's the cost of meetings? How many layers do you need between the street where the action's actually happening and the ivory tower? And today with technology, you don't need very many, if any. I see models that are profitable today, in today's environment and last year, they're wildly flat. Now there's some risk to that, but there's risk to being unprofitable. Like your warehouse guys don't like you anymore, or Fannie Mae doesn't like you anymore, right? Those kinds of things. And so, it's still a cost issue, but also as I float around companies, Dave, in many cases, it's a revenue issue. People are not focused on that top line about how do I eke out 10 basis points up there and then 10 basis points down on my expense. Now you have 20 basis points. And to your point, there's a whole segment of lenders who are just underwater that 10 or 20 basis points everything gets easier if you're in the black. Everything is hard if you're in the red.
So here's a couple, we both love data, but this is a client of ours, Homeowners Financial Group out of Scottsdale.
I know.
And they have some loan officers, like a big group of loan officers that are 6 basis points more profitable and have a 9% better conversion. And, this is another client of ours, NFM Lending. They've got 93 of their loan officers that are 65 basis points more profitable than their, they've got like 391, but than the other loan officers. And they have some loan officers that have a higher conversion rate. And so one of my thesis is a lot of this just comes down to sales training. This just comes down to how are they quoting rates? How are they doing pre-approvals? What questions are they asking? But I think just about every lender could improve their sales execution by at least 10 basis points and their conversion by at least 10% if they just did the right things. You agree with that?
First of all, I think you're light. I think it's better than that.
Well, what do you think it is? Let's get a Brian. I'd love a quote. What do you think? How many basis points is the average loan officer wasting because they're not a good value-based salesperson? And how bad do you think their conversion could be if we just got, again, they don't have to call more people. They don't have to prospect more. They just need to, like, when you run a credit report and you have a conversation, there's more value and you're giving advice versus price. What do you think? How much meat is on the bone?
Well, I think there's a lot, but I'm going to be a little controversial here and probably not the most popular guy on this answer. Look, we know that mortgage companies' margins, revenues have compressed materially over the last 2 years. Commissions have compressed far less. And so I continue to see companies who, with a desire to maintain a 125 to 175 basis point commission structure, while their margins have shrunk dramatically and their costs have shot up, they generally do not have either the courage and or the skill set to sit down originator by originator and become partners with that originator such that everybody can win. A big part of conversion is price. If price is artificially high to support the commission that's being paid, you're going to have less conversion. The company's going to have less funded loans. Your cost per loan is going to be higher. The originator's frustration with having a price that they can't convert because somebody else beat them out is also high. And there are companies out there that have done this, have sat down originator by originator, reset the thermometer with, you tell me, Dave, what you want to make, and you tell me what kind of price you can bear in the marketplace by market. And we're going to work together, collaborate, and be partners where you optimize your volume and I optimize my revenue. Oh, by the way, when we do that, we have to reduce PEs. We have to collect additional cash fees that are available in the marketplace. It's the number one sin I see in most companies on revenue is they're undervaluing their fee collection dramatically, or they have a leak in their boat around TRID errors, uncollected appraisals, those kinds of things, which often in 2 seconds of analysis come to 10 basis points. If you just plug this hole, you can pick up 10. If you add another few bucks to your cash fees, you can pick up 6. You can pick up 4. You can, and one big issue that's out there, and it's still out there, people have short lock durations against long delivery and fulfillment, meaning it's taking somebody 42 days to close loans on average, and they're locking their customer at app for 30 days. Anybody see a problem? So you either have to reprice the consumer, which is always fun, or what most do is they do a free extension, which reduces your gain on sale and impacts your hedge position. And when I pull up this data, companies say, well, we don't have the data. Yes, you do. 100% of the time they do. But they don't have it formatted right in a way that they can understand, look, and you have to do it down to the originator level. So Dave, if I continue to lock customers for 30 and my customers, because I'm heavy govy and I got, problem buyers and all that, takes me 60 days, but you're an originator who locks for 30 and closes in 22, you maybe should have a better deal.
Yeah.
So it's not one number, but you're dead on. There's often 25 available in the revenue line, and there's 10 to 20 available in the cost line.
Yeah. And so let me walk through a concept and I want to see your impressions.
And I think, by the way, smart originators are realizing that they have to have part of this discussion be them.
Oh yeah. No, I have lots of big customers, many of which are the top 10 nation lenders in the country. where they're like, how do we get our customers more profitable? That's why I'm doing
Well,
this
I'm
mortgage coach.
talking about individual originators have to be part of this discussion as well. Because it's the age-old issue. Would you rather make 150 basis points on zero volume or 110 basis points on 2 million?
Yeah, no brainer. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So let me walk you guys through this, Brian. I don't know if you know Greg, but he did the numbers. And by the way, the loan officers that are getting these results, they're using Mortgage Coach. They're going through our training. And one of the most important key concepts in our training is that speed to lead is no longer enough. Like my entire career, the first loan officer to get on the phone wins. I mean, the majority of the time. And by the way, I still think speed to lead is critical, but I'm saying it's not gone. It's just been elevated, that you need to get to the need of the consumer. Like, and this is, by the way, it's just solution selling, that you need to be the first one talking. You need to be the first one to really help that customer address their needs. And everyone who wants to move up, but has a, 2, 3, or 4% rate, they have a need. Every customer that has, go ahead.
I would add a third component to that,
Please.
Which is continuous follow-up.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The fortunes in the follow-up. So
Yeah.
I'll have to come up with another slide on that. Thank you, Brian. But getting to the need of the consumer, and this is what we call the advice revolution. It's what I call the advice revolution. It's why I'm doing this 10X challenge right now. And I want to I'm sure you'll make it better. Would love to even have you part of this if you want to be, is I think like almost every loan officer in America, if they just tweaked some things in their scripting and in their approach, they could get one extra loan a month, and they could do it in a way that's sustainable. They get one extra loan every month. They could get one extra realtor every month, and they could do it in a way that's sustainable. And they could all do all this in a way that reduces, rate exceptions. Now, as Mr. Mortgage Coach, I think one of those tweaks is to completely wipe this out. Like giving rates and fees in a market like this one, where like, here's your rate, here's your payment, here's your cash to close. Like, guys, rates are going to suck for a long time. Like even if they get down into the 4s, when more than 50% are at 2 and 3, it's not great. And so, Brian, one of the things that we teach is showing options. Like, hey, what if, hey, consumer, 2 points, 1 point, 0 points. And then especially when rates are above 6, hey, show them what a refi looks like at 5, show them date the rate, marry the house, show them strategies. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you want to add? I know you got more ideas.
First of all, I agree with everything you just said. Could you come back to the piece where you had the 10X slide?
Yeah, hang on. Let me
Maybe just one little edit right now, and maybe offline I can give you a lot of thoughts around this. I just was contracted to do
this one.
Yeah, that one. So I would only say one thing on that middle box: one more realtor, one more appropriately targeted realtor.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
One more realtor,
one more qualified realtor.
Bingo. Set a target. They got to do X number of transactions a year on average for me to go invest my time in them.
Yeah. Well, or what's the word? Successful, qualified, productive.
Whatever. Yep. Productive realtor who's meeting a certain criteria, right? And because I think that's the failing of a lot of salespeople today. You have a realtor tag on, you must be for me. No, not necessarily. I haven't sold a house in 26 months. And so make sure you know who you're calling on and why, right? Measure your approach, measure your pitch, measure your collateral material approach. Why are you of value to that person? And know what works. Measure your efforts of prospecting and do more of the stuff that's successful and less of the stuff that isn't. Wow, I'm sure that's just revelatory to you. That's been the essence of your whole career, right?
Yeah,
it's making those things, right? And so first of all, I agree with everything you just said in terms of the approach. And I think the other thing that's lacking is follow-up. Well, I talked to them twice and they said no. Okay. Well, there's all these studies where a lot of people make the buying decision after the seventh conversation. If you just hang in, you outrun most of your competitors.
Yeah, no, you're right. Now, I got two more questions. I want to go down this thing. The other thing I think, and by the way, this does have a little bit to do with the follow-up, but most lenders and most loan officers database, looks
Terrible.
like this. Like they're not leveraging data to be predictive. And they're not, and even though I do think, like 4 years ago, every lender's database looked like this, because of Sales Boomerang and our platform, we have gotten what I'd call data 101 in place, like, hey, people are getting the listing alert, they're getting the inquiry alert. Someone's cheating on me and they ran a credit report with someone else, but they're not being predictive enough. And their loan officers aren't taking action on it. They're not going from strategy to engagement, and they're not leveraging technology to do it. This is one of the things we do. But going from data to content and going from like lean content, like an email or a text, to more robust content, they're not doing this. So by the way, two questions on this data. What percentage of lenders do you think are leveraging data in a effective and efficient way so that they're not leaving a lot of leads in their database? What percentage of lenders?
Certainly less than 10%. I would venture that's less than 5.
Okay, so less than 5. And what do you think?
By the way, Dave, let me just separate lender from originator. I think there's a lot of companies, and I don't know what that percentage is, but I still think it's by far the minority, who do a good job at capturing internal data, leads, those kinds of things, and then putting them out either, to a call center, to their originator, to whatever. But the percentage drops of, it's the quarterback and receiver problem, right? I can throw a perfect spiral, but if you couldn't catch a ball to save your life, that would be the New York Giants, because I'm a lifelong fan. Right? If you couldn't catch a ball to save your life, it doesn't really matter how well and how pretty I throw it, right?
Right.
And so I think, and I've had this in my past where I've had really successful originators. I mean, 60 fundings a month. And I had corporate leads to send them, and they were like, no, Moss, I'm good. I run my business. I don't want to confuse my LOA. I don't want we're on this group. Okay, cool. I'm good. I'm in, baby. You're that successful. I'm out. That's not the case, right? That's a 1%er. And so the number of originators who are terrible at managing the handoff and the follow-up and the data and the, measuring their business. How many originators do you know who take a day a month and sit down with their team and assess their business?
Not enough.
Not enough. I think it's a very small number.
What do you think about lenders? And I've been advocating that right now, the loan officer scorecard is just how many loans you closed and what your volume is. What do you think would happen if we started putting profitability, how much they're costing in price exceptions? So right alongside that, the loan officer that's costing the company 6 basis points, which is awesome, is Ladderboard, who's costing the company 60 basis points. So we kind of, on the same scorecard, we put profitability in terms of basis points, and then we also put conversion, credit report to loan, so that it's like who's most efficient profitability and who's most conversion. First of all, would it be a good idea? Is it a good idea to start scorecarding efficiency measures like that?
Yeah, first of all, for the company management and ownership, it's absolutely a requirement, in my view, that you actually know the answer. Whether you share it with an originator or you share it with their boss or you coach them based on that scorecard, a big issue in our industry today is courage. What I hear is, well, if I do that with an originator, they're not going to like it, and we're going to have breakage. Because that originator believes that they're wildly profitable. And if the company would simply reveal this magic bucket of cash they have on each loan that they don't show the originator, then all would be good. Now, For what it's worth, I'm a believer in transparency. If you were an originator working for me, I'd show you every number on the deal. Whether I paid you on every number, separate issue, but I want you to know how profitable or lack thereof you are for me, whether you're an originator, a branch manager, whether running a branch or a region, running a region or a division. I want you to know, how do you fit into the organization on an all-in basis? Now, some people don't do that. Some people are reluctant to be transparent. And then what I see more than anything is, well, that'll piss off the originators because they have a view that they're just really, one percenter. I had a one percenter work for me a long time ago. And when we ran the P&L on that person's 70 million a year in production, they were costing me an immense amount of money. We tried to fix it. And then we fired the person.
Yeah. So
it was a boat anchor.
Well, what I'm, yeah,
masquerading as a top producer.
Yeah. And what I'm recommending is these are just efficiency metrics, like conversion and price exceptions. To me, that's like a sales fitness score. That's showing you how well because conversion is, hey, I talked to 10 people, or 100 credit reports. Which did I convert?
It's going to be a contentious conversation, though, because if my price exceptions are high as an originator, my view is you don't know how to price.
No, but you're showing how they compare to their peers. So you're seeing who's got the best conversion, who's got the worst conversion.
Yeah, you only have pure data within the company, and I agree with that. By the way,
and I'm talking just pure data within the company, because every company prices kind of differently. Some companies are like, hey, price exceptions are fine. And, we built pricing to have 20 basis points in conversion, but whatever. I'm saying within pure data, I am recommending it.
I like rank order. I think the folks who are doing it the best should be recognized, and the people that are at the bottom of the list should realize they're at the bottom of the list. And I think if smart companies then see that group at the bottom of the list, they should understand that their seat is for sale.
Well, they can also understand that you can improve.
Yes.
Like if I know, Jeremy Forcier, for example, he's a top producer at Cross Country, and he has some of the lowest price exceptions in that company. He's also a very top producer. Everybody can see the leaderboard where Jeremy ranks, and it would just be good. Like, oh, if I'm cost the company 36 basis points and Jeremy's 6, it's like, Jeremy, how you doing this, bro?
Right.
Like how about this? Let's do some best practice training around how to be more profitable. Let's do some best practice training around how to get better conversion, because doesn't that help a loan officer make more money when you're teaching and training on best practices?
You have to foster that kind of culture. You have to be willing to have some uncomfortable conversations. And look, early in my career, when I first became a regional manager 300 years ago, the company I worked for at the time had a regional manager who was #1 in the company by a moonshot. Every single meeting I was in, I managed to sit next to him. I managed to sit next to him at breakfast. I sat next to him at dinner. And I would spend 3 days with a Vulcan mind meld and drain every thought approach that he had, why he was good, how he handled this, how he handled that, and then went back and tried to emulate it. If somebody's already doing it successfully sitting next to you, it's been the mystery of my career, to the degree that I can't get people to go sit down and find out what that guy or gal's doing and then implement. And some of it is people are just not sufficiently disciplined. They don't want to work that hard. They make enough. It's not about optimization. I'm making enough. I live a good life. I'm 40 hours a week. I get home. I take my kid to school at 10 in the morning. It's good for me. And the other person's killing it in terms of what they're doing, but they're willing to pay a higher price. One of my favorite sayings in life: everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die. Everybody wants things in life. Only a select percentage are willing to pay the price.
Powerful. So closing thoughts. In this halftime report, I'm planning to really make a case that it's time for extreme transparency, and what I just shared, scorecarding, profitability, scorecarding, conversion, in different cultures, in different ways, that will be a challenge, but I would make the case it'll make you better. And remember, what would it be like if you were 10 basis points more profitable last year and last month and last quarter? I believe extreme transparency it's a move. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet. I'm saying it's a move.
Oh.
I'm gonna say I've got three extremes. Tell me if you like all three. Extreme education. Like we need to invest in training our loan officers to not just do loans, do guidelines. Like we need to, train them on advice. That's why I'm doing this 10X training, and I'm personally doing more of this. You can go to mortgagecoach.com/10X to learn more about this. And then my last extreme is extreme personalization, where we need to get better at being more, if you're going to get speed to need, you need to predict what the consumer wants. And then you need to hyper personalize around not only the local market and how it's going to impact them, but what they want and what they need. Those are my three extremes. What are your thoughts?
Look, first of all, I don't want to sound like a sycophant, but I totally agree with you. One of the things I would just add, Dave, is that at a company level, the first extreme transparency, be honest with thyself. I see companies all over the place who, for one reason or another, and I have my suspicions as to why, don't scorecard anybody, don't create discrete divisions of their data so they can really understand their business, because it'll expose somebody. And or makes, once you're faced with the actual data, okay, now you have to act on it. And the courage to do that on yourself and on your company, be honest and be fully analytical about what your current situation is, and then be transparent with the folks who work with you. And so those who are unwilling to be transparent with themselves will never get to step two. That's number one. So, and then the other thought I had is when you talk about extreme personalization, you and I both know that some of the best people in the business, if you sat and taped every one of their conversations with prospective buyers, you'll find a very similar approach, because they found a cadence and an approach that works and is successful. And I had the good fortune in my career as a brand new originator trainee in 1982 to work for 6 months with the top producer in the company, in his car with him, calling on agents every single day. And much of what I use today is just a rehash of what I heard come out of his mouth. I saw it work. I mastered the same delivery, the same cadence, the same approach. Remarkably, it worked for me as well. Now, I didn't use everything, but it worked for what I was. And so I think personalization can also include best practices, best pitches, best approaches. And maybe you put it in your own words, maybe you put it in your own dialect, maybe you put it in your own tempo. But generally, great approaches work reasonably universally. And, I just always took the approach of, I can spend the rest of my career looking for the answer. I can go see the guy who actually does it really well and monitor him a little bit, and then find how I do the same thing.
Gosh, I want to close out. Get ready for your closing thought. I interviewed Bill Dallas yesterday, and he said something that I wrote down. I took a quote. He's like, and it parroted something you said a minute ago, where he said a lot of the owners of companies, the CEOs, the head of production, they need to avoid the founder's trap. And it's like, hey, what got us here isn't going to get us where we need to go. Like, we need to rethink some things. And I think, extreme transparency, extreme education, and inspiring and educating. Like, I think, we need to think, like, not just teach and train, we need to inspire and educate, and extreme personalization is the way. But you said something just now that if every loan officer, because I know I'm going to have more loan officers watch this than CEOs and heads of production. Right. But what if every loan officer that watched this went to their boss, whoever is above you that kind of knows the P&L and said, how do my conversion compare to the company? And how does my, profitability compare? And can I talk and brainstorm with the people that have the highest conversion rates, that have that? Like, so first of all, if we actually had loan officers and branch managers that are watching this, go to their managers and ask for this. Again, we're not talking about.
You're bringing up something really out of the box. Like, you mean people are actually going to talk to each other and perhaps coach each other?
I mean, that happens. I just don't, I think it happens in a status quo way.
It does happen.
It happens in a status quo way. It doesn't happen in a, how are we going to change this thing way?
The best players I've ever had work with me were hogs for training and best practices and a better way.
Yeah, you're right.
They would spend the money, they would go to the person, they'd spend the time, they would do it. To be honest, it was the bottom third that I had a hard time getting to embrace somebody else's better approach.
All right. Well, guys, any executive watching this, I'm doing Mortgage Coach 10X training for all. I'm also, doing custom training for our enterprise clients so that it's led by your loan officers, your loan officers with the best metrics that are advisors. We're doing training all this month, all next month. The halftime report is coming soon. Kristen and I will, we'll take quotes from Brian. We'll pick out what we want here. Brian, knowing that we're writing this halftime report, any closing thoughts, anything you want to say that you just want to make sure you get, the Brian Hale message and that you haven't already said, or just a closing thought. Maybe you already said it. You just want to put an explanation on it.
Yeah, two quick comments. One, to put a tail on Bill's comment. I think Bill and I have talked before, and I think many of these things we see it in very similar ways. Part of the founder's trap is not just, this is how we've always done it, so we're going to stick to this approach because it's how I built the company, is a resistance to bring in new blood with new ideas that are going to challenge the status quo. I think that's helpful. And companies that tend to get, I'm only going to do it one way, and it's not just companies, it's originators. Individual originators have to think that way. One of the metaphors I use in all of my public speaking, I've done 3-4 presidents clubs here this year as the keynote. And one of the things I bring along with me is my good friend T-Rex. And have you and I ever had this conversation?
I think we have. I'm not totally finishing your sentence.
Yeah,
but feel free.
I have a slide that comes up behind me, which is this big T-Rex tearing through the screen, right? And the whole metaphor is very simply this. For 300 million years, T-Rex ruled the world, right? They were the top of the food chain. They went where they wanted. They made little T-Rexes. They ate what they wanted. If somebody from corporate showed up to give them grief, they ate them. It's all good, right? Have you seen one lately? No. All right, what happened? Most paleontologists will tell you that some event happened in the environment that killed off the leaf eaters that T-Rex used to feed on. Unfortunately for T-Rex, he had a brain the size of a walnut. He was not exactly an adaptable guy, right? Wasn't somebody who could evolve because the environment was evolving and he couldn't evolve. And now a T-Rex is what's known as a tar pit. So my question to you originators sitting in the room when I do these keynotes, are you a T-Rex in search of a tar pit? Or have you recognized that every single thing in your environment in the mortgage industry has changed? And the speed of change is going to accelerate. You don't want to be replaced with artificial intelligence bots. What makes you better? Got to look in the mirror and answer that. And if you are not evolving in your business and searching for new ways and new approaches and best practices and understanding your business as a CEO of your business, I'm telling you, you are destined for a tar pit.
So I'm going to put one little explanation on that. Have you heard of Warren Buffett's 3 eyes?
I think
three
so.
eyes. So he's got this thing and how new markets are created and how markets, who wins in markets. And the 3 eyes are in every new market and every success, it starts with the innovators. Eye number 1. Eye number 2 is the imitators. And the third eye is the idiots. And again, it's Warren Buffett. I didn't call anybody an idiot, but like in 2020 and 2021, all three eyes broke records.
Yes.
It is a new era in mortgage. Brian and I have shared some data, and the future belongs to the innovators. And to be an innovator, you got to change. You got to do something different. So, I mean, we believe one of those things different. It's not giving fee worksheets to consumers anymore. Whether you're a loan officer or you're a company, you need to have mortgage coach. You need to have options built into your systems. You need to have advice trained into your organization. You need to have predictability. You need to be able to predict every lead, every loan, every basis point matters more than ever now. And by the way, for the folks that are going to have that stupendously awesome 5 to 10 years, it's going to matter. Like we're not going to have $4 trillion years in the mortgage business again, And so, Brian, if anyone wants to follow you, I think the best place is on LinkedIn, right? Like you do a great job. You're like a gift to the mortgage industry.
Well, some people have a different word. But look, some people who follow me over the last 2 years have commented that I've been really bearish. I don't think so. What I've tried to do is be pragmatic and honest in an environment where I see people get on and say, hey, on May 10th, rates are going to drop forever and we're going to be back in the fours and bon ton roulette. I just don't get how that's helpful. I think you have to help people with reality, not be Debbie Downer, but with reality. And then how do we react? How do we evolve? How do we not T-Rex? How do we become the next thing that takes flight? And I agree with everything you just said in terms of innovator. And I don't know if you would agree with me or not, but my own sense is there's often a fine line between innovator and idiot. It's not 30 miles, because activity may or may not produce results. Smart activity, innovation, learning, being better. I started to tell you before, I'm doing a deal for one of the biggest bank sales forces in the country here in a month on temporary buy downs, very similar to the one I did for the public.
Refer them to me. Introduce me. We got to get them on Mortgage Coach.
Yeah, we're gonna customize it for them because we have all their internal credit information and product information, those kinds of things. But even when I did that seminar, I was blown away at how many people came off there in the comments back with, oh man, this is just, revelatory. No, it's not. It's like simple math. And it's not to diminish anybody, but it reminds me that, a little bit, you've heard the saying before that, some people are born in life and they wake up on third base and think they hit a triple. You've heard that kind of phrase. Mm-hmm. I think to some degree, there was 50,000 new NMLS licenses between 2019 and 2021. It's now gone away and gone the other way. A lot of people that joined our industry woke up on third base and thought they hit a triple.
Right.
Never went to the batting practice, never really understood the fundamentals of the game. And look, if you spend 2 years picking up the phone and making $9,000 per phone call, life's pretty good, except that it doesn't last. And so are you built to last? Are you built to last? Yes or no? Are you evolutionary? Or are you stuck in your ways and you're simply waiting for the good times to come back? You're going to wait a long time.
Love it. Always appreciate you, brother. What's your website for anyone listening that they want to go and learn more about your organization?
Yeah, www.mortgageap.com. Mortgage, A as in Apple, P as in Peter.com. It's Mortgage Advisory Partners is the firm. And we've got content up there, and we've got different articles, speeches that I've done, those kinds of things. And obviously we post stuff up. LinkedIn is probably the best way to stay daily in touch. And then I have a free newsletter that the subscription is just growing wildly that I put out every week that people can subscribe to either on the website or on LinkedIn. The link is there. Just requires them to put up their data, and they get a newsletter from me every weekend on the market.
Well, bro, thank you for so many years of service to our industry. I mean, as a operator and CEO, and now as a mentor and a consultant to organizations, super grateful for you. We agree on, I think, almost everything. In the couple lunches we've had since I moved back to Orange County, I really enjoy our time together, Brian. We do need to drink wine together sometime.
Come on,
So,
baby.
and we do need to fly fish together sometime. So,
Absolutely.
so let's put those two things on the bucket.
I have 2 new ranches in Montana. So I'll shoot you a couple links, man, that I got another one that I just found that I'm getting ready to go to as well. So anytime.
I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully you got value. If you don't already follow our YouTube channel, this is both on the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel and the TrustEngine YouTube channel. For all you loan officers, remember we've got a Facebook group, TrustEngine Facebook. Make sure you follow Brian, and I hope you got a lot of value from today. Take care, everybody.